Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How y'all doing? I'm so glad you guys joined me today. You know, I promised when I made another video a while back, a part one about foster care. I promised I was going to come back with a part two. Well, this is it. I wanted to just come back and give you some more information about the foster care system because for those that didn't see my first video, that I put out, it was talking about foster care and foster care children. I've been an active foster parent since 1986. I've kept traditional children in the beginning. Those are children with so called normal behavior. But if you take any child out of what they know, away from their mother and their father and their sisters and their bed and their toys, that takes away all of their normacy. So you see, any child that's in foster care, whether they say that they're traditional with normal behavior, it's not so normal after you take them away from everything they know. But those are the type of children I kept when I first started out being a foster parent. I kept them what you call traditional. Now with the traditional foster kids, I kept children maybe up to the age of 12, 13. I think the oldest child I've had probably was about 14 or 15 years old. Now, with these traditional foster kids, I've even had babies, newborns, straight from the hospital. And you have to understand a lot of time with these children, usually they're in foster care because there is some problem within their family. Whether they have been abused, whether they've been abandoned. But in some cases, that's not the case. Sometimes their parents die off. Can you imagine your mom dying and she was a single parent and she herself was in foster care and she know no active biological relatives? So then that means that child has no grandmother, no grandfather, no aunts, no uncles, none that they know of. Because sometimes these children don't originate from where I am here in Florida. These kids are sometimes from other states and they wind up here in Florida. So sometimes their parents die, sometimes their parents get sick and they can't take care of them. So every child that's in foster care is not because they've been abused in some way or abandoned. But for the majority, that's the case. Most of the children in foster care that I have had experience with, they have been abused mentally, physically, and sexually. Something that I didn't realize until I became a foster parent. I used to always think about just men abusing children. Never thought about women abuse children sexually just as much as men do. And then sometimes even with these poor children that come into foster care, they've been even abused by other older children. Other older children have abused them. So you see, that's terrible. It's been cases where different family members in the household was abusing one child. So you see, that's a terrible situation for a child to come in to have to live like that. So now when that child gets into foster care, okay, this child has already been hurt. Some of the worst has already happened to this child. They have never perhaps been shown the love or the care that they so rightly deserve, even as a human being. So now when they come into foster care, their behavior is totally off the chain. And sometimes, new foster parents especially, they can't understand that why the child's behavior is so horrible. Because this child is hurt. This child has been so damaged. This child is angry. They're angry because things have happened to them that they had no control over. Some of these children, they come into foster care. I've had children that have a detachment disorder. Those are children that never attach to their biological parents. Sometimes if you can get these children at a very young age, say maybe from infancy up until about 5 or 6 years old. And if you can really get that child and really love that child and nurture that child, perhaps they will attach to you as a foster parent, even if one day they go to a forever home. We said forever home because that means an adoptive placement. So that's what we hope for all of the children, that they get a forever home. So if that would happen, that would be great. But can you imagine some of these children, they never attach to anyone between 0 and 6 years old. They never get a bond with anyone. Can you imagine the type people that they most likely are a great chance that they will grow up to be? So it's so important for these children to get into a stable environment and not someone that's only interested in a check. Because most of the time when people find out that I'm a foster parent, the first thing they want to know, how much y'all get paid, what they pay a month. That's all they want to know, how much we getting paid. Understand, everybody need to get compensated for what they do. When you're keeping foster children, you need to be compensated. But if you want to go into it only for the money, it's not going to work because your heart won't be in it. And you're only going to be in it for a short term. To be in it for the long haul with these children, your heart got to be in it and your mind. And you got to understand that these children are hurt, they've been abused, and they've been damaged. And it's nothing worse than these children coming into care and they get more damaged in the foster care system than they did even when they were out of it. So we have to be careful that we don't want to damage these children any further. That doesn't mean that you spoil them or that you just let them do anything they want to do. That's not the point that I'm making. Because I have one biological child that they said I would never have any children. But then when I started doing foster care, I got pregnant. And I had an 11-pound baby boy. But by then I had 2 little girls in my house. At first I had one little girl. She was 8 years old. And then after that, I got another one that was 6. And later on, the one that was 6 years old, I got her biological sister. So you see, I adopted all 3 of these children. And then later in life, it was a friend of mine that was a foster parent. She had a child in her home that she had ever since she was like 4 or 5. And my friend, she got sick, this little girl's foster mom. So she couldn't keep her any longer. So I took her in the day that she turned 14 years old. And I kept her in my home, I believe, until she was around 20 years old. But understand, there's a lot of difficulties when you're dealing with foster children. Nobody can give you a book of direction or anything, no more than they can if you give birth to a child. They don't come with directions. So when you take a foster child into your home, it's day by day. Usually the foster parent learns these children more than anyone, whether their likes, their dislikes, their habits, their medical condition, because you become the mama. But the fact that you become the mama and these children, they look at you as their mom. You also, sometimes children, they've been abused so much to the extent that they can't even remember what the abuse was. You see, if they can remember the abuse, perhaps through therapy and medication, which I don't like medication for children, but some children really need medication because it will give them a better quality of life. And I had to even grow to understand that. It's a disservice to a child if they cannot be treated for their illness. That's just like you having a child with emotional or mental illness, and then you won't give them medication that will help stabilize them. That's just like having a child with a broke leg, but you won't take them to the doctor or the hospital to have that leg set, put a cast on it, so they can maintain and that leg can grow back into a healthy state. Same way with mental illness and behavior. If there is something to get these children stabilized, they need it because it's so much going on with these children, and it helps them to have a better quality of life. So the only thing with foster care and newer foster parents, and some maybe it being it for a couple of years, sometimes the children get more damage in foster care than they do before they came into foster care, because sometimes people won't recognize that these children, people don't want to recognize that children can suffer from mental illness, that children can suffer from emotional stress, postpartum stress. Children suffer from that too. They suffer from postpartum stress over and over again. Everything traumatic that has happened in their life, postpartum stress. They saw their dad beating their mom, postpartum stress. They got evicted from their home. They're living in the car in a park, postpartum stress. So you see, they got postpartum stress, compounded on top of each other. Postpartum stress. Just like men that's coming out the military dealing with postpartum stress. Children, people in general deal with it, but these children, they're so little in their little young minds, and even like preteens and teenagers, they don't know what to do with that stress. We as adults can't handle stress. So these little children, they dealing with all of this stress being just stacked on top of each other. Their whole little lives they've been dealing with stress. I've had children to come into my home. Through talking to this child, I found out that the child was sold at one time even for drugs. And this child used to talk to me and tell me that the lady that had her used to keep her locked up in a room all the time. But from listening to that story, we was thinking, well, the lady was mean. Why did she keep you locked up in a room? That was terrible. But as I kept talking to this child and listening to her, found out that when her mom sold her or pawned her to this person to pay off a debt for drugs or whatever, the woman that she sold her to was running a brothel house. So the reason she kept the child locked up in the room was to protect her from her clients and her customers. So you see, we had to come to the conclusion that she wasn't locking her up to be mean to her. She locked her up to protect her. But that little girl got out of a window one day and she made her way back to her neighborhood, to her aunt, and that child had to travel for miles by herself. So that was a terrible experience. That was from one of the children that I've gotten in my home. So you see, that child have had problems from probably the day that she was born. And even as an adult, she probably will always deal with postpartum stress and depression, or maybe not even being trusting. Because when you can't trust your own mama, your biological mama, who can you trust? You see? So it's a lot with children coming into care. They have to be loved and they have to be nurtured. And sometimes no matter how much you love them and no matter how much you nurture them, when they grow up, eventually sometimes they will stray away from you. Because they're still torn. They're being torn between you and they're being torn between their biological mother. And the ones out there that have biological mothers, you love your mom, right? I don't care if your mom was drunk, naked in the street, that's still your mom. So that's the way it is with foster children and children sometimes that's adopted. If they got biological moms somewhere, no matter if they're a crackhead, alcoholic, whatever, that's their mom. They love their mom. You see, that's that unconditional love. They may not like them, but they love them. And you can't take that away from them. So don't take it personal if you adopt a child or if you foster a child for years and when they grow up, they venture, because where is he going? He's here with me. This is home for him. It's not like I could call them and tell them, okay, y'all need to put him somewhere else. Where is he going? He's with me. I've had him for over a year. Unless he's going to a forever home, He's just like my own child. I have to take care of him, whether he's sick, I'm sick, whatever's going on. And see, when you have foster kids, that's the way you got to feel about them. You got to care about these children and love them and be fair. That don't mean they can just run amok in your house, as I've said in other videos. But children know when you're being fair to them. Understand, raising my children, biological, and my daughters that I adopted, I was a loving mom, but I was a very strict, firm mom. And I had to be. Because you know what? The streets want your kids, so you have to tighten up on them to keep them together. That don't mean that you don't let them do things, but you have to govern their lives because they're children. If you let them make all of the decisions, their life is going to be in just turmoil because children can't make decisions that adults can. That's why there's parents and that's why there's children. God put the parents in charge to raise the children. That don't mean that like these kids have been just abused and tossed around like they're a piece of tissue paper or something. That's not what that means. You have to govern these children's lives and direct them in the way that they're supposed to go in life. You got to care about these children in foster care and you have to love them. You know, people used to tell me, say, well, there's no way you're going to love a foster child like you love your own child. I don't really agree with that because you see, there's different kinds of love. And each type love can be just as strong as the next, but it's a different kind of love. You see, when I gave birth to my son, that was a natural love. It was automatic. I carried him in my womb. My foster children that I adopted, my daughters, it was an acquired love. I learned to love those children and they learned to love me. They have gravitated more back to their mother, and I'm good with that because I know that I did all that I could do for them. I took good care of them. I did all within my power. I tried to do my best. I ran a tight ship, and sometimes I sit back and I try to think about would I have done anything differently? Would I have been an easier mom? Would I just let them run and do what they want to do a little bit more? And my answer is no. If I had to do it all over again, I would do it the exact same way because I'm the same person. I'm the same person. I have not changed. I'm the same person. I'm taking care of children now. I'm still firm. I'm loving but firm. And you see, that's what children need. They know when you love them. They know when you're being unfair. So that's what you don't want to be, is unfair to children. You want to be fair with them because they can feel that. They know when you care about them. And that don't mean that they're not going to show their behinds, because they are. They're going to show their behinds. But you know, going back to these children that did not connect with their parents at birth, these children are some of the most difficult children to raise. And then you think about women that's drinking alcohol when they're pregnant. See, women don't think about what's going on inside their bodies when they're carrying these little fetuses inside. They don't know the damage that they do to these children when they drink alcohol while pregnant. You see, us as foster parent, we get the end results of what's going on in that womb, because then when that baby is born, perhaps that mom can't handle it, or she give it up for adoption, or the child get taken away from them because that child be so off the chain she can't do nothing with him. And just a spur of a moment, she been to slap the child into a wall, literally. So now she lost her child, not thinking that she caused the problem when she was out there every weekend drinking heavily. Fetal alcohol syndrome. Look it up. It does so many bad things to babies while they're in the womb. And then children that don't attach. When you don't attach to your parents or your mom, and you're past the age of 6 or 7 years old, you're most likely not going to attach to anyone. That's just like having a grown tree with no root. Or even it has a root, but that root has never been in the soil. You see? It never attached. It grew, but it had no nourishment. It never attached to anything, so it just grew wild. I had one child in my home like that. When she came into my house, she was so buck wild. She used to scream and holler to the top of her lungs every night. And I had done everything in my power to stop her until one night I got right in her face and told her to shut your mouth up. Okay, she stopped. Because I had did all the niceness to her. Stop. What's wrong? What's wrong? No. No one had ever told her to shut her mouth up. Be quiet. Go to sleep. So you see, don't think that these children know, because they don't know. She thought it was okay to do all that screaming and hollering. Nobody had ever stopped her. They kept saying, oh, she's just bad. Oh, she's just this. Oh, she need medication. They had on medication when I got her. But when she came to me and I adopted her, I took her off the medication. Because a lot of things that they were saying about her, it wasn't true. She didn't need all that medication. She needed to be trained. So I used to say that she was like a tree or weed outside, or even a beautiful tree perhaps that you plant, and maybe a rose bush, and it have those thorns on it, and that rose bush, it just grows wild in all different directions if you don't kind of prune it back. And sometimes you have to even put maybe a stick or a post or something inside of a pot of a plant so it can grow up straight. That's how it was with her. And that's how it is with a lot of children in care, and perhaps even your own children at home. Sometimes you have to continuously prune them back. You have to correct them. You have to tell them. Sometimes you have to help prop them up so that they can grow up straight and become responsible, productive citizens. And to this day, she's very responsible. She's a mother and she's productive with her children. She's a good mom. So you see, it all starts from when they're little. And you see, I got her past the age, she was a little past the age of 6. But it was a lot of things she didn't know. So I had to teach her those things. And you see, it couldn't be like, okay, honey, do this. Okay, baby, do that. I had to be loving but firm. Because children sometimes, especially children that have been through a lot, if you give them an inch, they're going to take a whole mile. So with children in foster care, you have to have structure. They have to know what to expect out of you and out of your house. They need that structure. Because when you have children, and if you have that structure, they grow up to be those straight adults that you want them to become. They grow up to be productive people in the world. And that's what you want out of them. Whether they're close to you or not, you want to know that they're productive and they can maintain in life. Because you see, things that's in the genes with these children, you can't change that either. So a lot of things about them you wish that you could change, or you wish that would have been different, but you can't change the genes. You can't do nothing with that DNA. So when they gravitate back to their biological families, don't be so hurt or so crushed about it. Just know that you did all that you could do when you had them. You loved them, you took good care of them, you cherished them, you laughed with them, you clown with them, because children love to clown. And my kids love to tell me, Mama, you so funny. On and on, because we used to love to clown. We laughed a lot. But when Miss V said get it together, or Mama V said get it together, I meant get it together. And see, in my house, being a single parent, my voice had to be the one to mean something. Because it wasn't like I could tell them, okay, I'm going to tell your dad about this. No. What I says goes. But with my kids, too, I always gave them 3 chances. Some parents want a child to do something, they want to do it right now. I always gave them 3 chances. And after that 3rd chance, I used to tell them, okay, you've struck out. So now some consequences got to follow. But you have to give them chances, because they're coming out of a life that they had no structure. Nobody cared whether they did good or did bad, because it's a lot of people that had them, even in foster care, they only had them for a check. They cared nothing about the child.